All right, thanks for tuning back in. Today we are going to take a look at your freshly installed Fedora Linux desktop. This will be the look of the screen on your first reboot after your fresh install. And the first thing I would recommend you start with is make sure that your operating system, your desktop, is properly set up. So go in here, click on this icon right here, and click on the chainring. And then let's just go through systematically. I'm not going into, nitty-gritty details on every little thing if it doesn't really pertain to you just getting your system going, okay? Here is networking. It's highlighted. It shows that you're connected, and this orange button shows that it's turned on. When you click on the chainring, it gives you a rundown of your IP address and that you've got a route and a DNS. Again, we're not going to go into all that, but when you see this, your network should be working. Another good way that you could test this is click up here on the top left corner, and just bring up your web browser. In this case, this is Fedora. It's Firefox. And this already brought up the fedoraproject.org page. So in case you don't trust that, we can also go to, maybe let's go to Yahoo. And since this is loading live, you know your network connection is working. Okay, so we can close this nonsense. We've tested it. There are two protocols here. This is the older protocol that is pervasive through most of the internet and computer systems that are networked. This is the newer protocol. I have them both turned on. You can do whatever is relative to your network. Make sure that you've got automatic turned on for both IP6 and IP4. And I may go into more detail on this in the future, but as we just saw, the network is working. I was just looking over the settings because I'm curious. And well, we can close that. If you made changes, obviously you would click on the apply button. All right. So VPN, that's a virtual private network. We're not going to go into that right now. Proxy, we're not going to go into that right now either, but those are functions that are there, maybe for a later point in time. Bluetooth, unless you have a specific device that requires this to be on, I would highly recommend you turn it off. Basically, because from a systems administration perspective, you want to reduce the attack surface. Nowadays, especially if you're on a laptop, but this could also be on a desktop computer in your home or your apartment or wherever you are, an attacker would have to be in your proximity, but still, why risk it? If you don't need it, turn it off. Less junk running on your computer, okay? Especially if you have an older computer, you want to conserve your CPU cycles for stuff that you want to do, not have a random stuff running in the background. Next victim, display. So this is obviously your display. This is how your desktop is going to look and what resolution you're going to use. Now, here, the difference, first of all these numbers, if this doesn't mean anything to you, this is basically the dots that comprise your visual display. In the first is in the X direction, which goes from left to right. The second number is how many dots go in the Y direction, up and down. And all those dots on the screen make up the image that you see. The more dots you have, the higher the resolution is, the crisper, the more high quality the image, all right? These numbers depend upon two things. Number one, your graphics card in your computer and your monitor. So normally, only the numbers that are compatible with your computer will show up here. And now it's just up to you to pick what resolution you want. Depends on if you're going to be doing writing, or if you're going to be doing graphics work, or if you're going to be doing gaming, for example. I'm not going to go too deep into this here. I've used an optimal setting for the screen recording, and yet I still decided to scale the display up a little bit because I felt that the text was a little bit too small at its native 100%. So let's just quickly take a look at this, make a case in point so you know what I'm talking about. I go back to the original 100%, which is the native resolution here. I'm going to apply this and keep those changes. You notice how um, the resolution, or rather the text and the numbers, have gotten smaller. Okay, so I can still read this, but it's a little bit small for me even if I'm only, what is it, maybe a foot and a half, 2 feet away from the screen. And for you too, this may not be optimal. So rather than keeping it at 100, let's take a look at 150% and see what that looks like. And you on your own, you play with this when it comes to your own desktop, and you figure out which resolution works best for you. The best thing to do is to really set the native resolution to the optimal setting. And then if you want high resolution with graphics, but the text is too small, then you get into this situation where you want to scale things to make it easier on your eyeballs, okay? So 150% will look like this. To me, that's a little bit, it's unnecessary to be that big. So I'm just going to go back to 125, which should be a nice compromise and work for both of us. Okay. Night lights. This is a feature that is not available here because I'm running a virtual machine, but the night light will come on. Usually this is set to sunset versus sunrise. It'll come on at sunset and start reducing the blue light in your screen display and add a bit more red light, which is supposed to help with your circadian rhythm. Not going to go too much deeper into that. I'm sure you've heard of it. So sound is already automatically set up. Here you can control the output to your speakers. Usually people control the volume by, I don't know, turning the knob on the speaker, but it's also convenient on some keyboards. They have a volume up and down key where then this slider would actually adjust if I hit that key. Balance is between left and right speaker, so you want to have this in the center most likely. And in my case, I'm using a virtual machine, so I have no need for a microphone here. But if you want to do video conferencing, for example, you talk to customers or you talk to family or whatnot, you're remote, again, with a laptop, coffee shop, hotel, traveling, whatever, you'll want to have this microphone turned up, and you want to make sure that you've selected the proper device. So if you have those, wireless earbuds, they would show up here on the list. Or if you have a wired headset, it would show up on the list. Otherwise, a lot of computers already have, well, laptops, they have a microphone already built in, which normally will show here. Okay. I have this, obviously I have this turned off. That's what that looks like. If it was on, it would look like this. And the slider determines the sensitivity of the microphone. So if you have it turned too low, the other person may not be able to hear you. You have to speak up. If you have it set too high, and if you're in a noisy environment, you get the idea, right? So you need to balance that. Power is just as it sounds. Most people will set this to balanced, so that the CPU will have adequate power to give you efficient and fluid responsiveness in your interaction with the computer, while not using excessive amounts of power, especially if you're on a battery. Again, I'm on a VM, so I want to use as much power as possible. It can't use more power than the host computer has anyway. But if I turn this down, I have noticed a degradation in performance. So in my case, that's why this is there. Okay. So next step here under power saving, you can blank the screen and turn that on, and then just tell it after how many minutes of you being away from your computer would you want the screen to go blank and conserve some power. You can set this to whatever timeout you need. If you are in a secure environment, or maybe even you have kids at home, you may not want to rely on this screen blanking, although it's good to have on too. But you'll probably want to manually lock the screen so that somebody doesn't get on your computer, especially if you're in the middle of a project. Multitasking. To be honest with you, I don't know what to do with that hot corner. It doesn't seem to do anything here on the VM. So I'm going to leave this alone. The hot corner I remember from my days of using the Mac, where if you move the pointer to the top left of the screen, usually you have a corner programmed to do something. Usually in my case, it was, show all the active windows that I have open because I want to switch to a different app. I'm actually going to turn this off. These are on by default. I don't need it. Active screen edges. I think this is where if you turn this on and you move a window to the far left of the screen, it'll just maximize that window. I don't find that useful either because I usually custom scale my window to the size that I want, because this is kind of an all or nothing. Once you move a window to the far left, it'll just maximize. Let's see if that works now. No, it doesn't. Maybe like this. Yeah, see, it just maximized. And that's not the kind of control that I want. I actually want to control the size more precisely. So I don't use that, but it's there for you, okay? Dynamic workspaces. So what you're looking at here, this background, including this window, is on a workspace. Now let's click up here. Now you actually see, let me adjust this a little bit to illustrate the point a little bit better. Here you have a workspace, but here you have a little gap, and this leads to another workspace that's empty. So now, especially if you're very organized and you want an uncluttered work experience, you can open up a new app here, and then you can switch on over, and you notice it created a whole new virtual workspace right here. And then you can open up your web browser and work on the web in this particular workspace. And you notice how it has these workspaces where rather than having 15 windows open, all on one desktop, all in one workspace, you can have different applications open so that way you can focus on one thing on one workspace and hopefully not get distracted. Okay, so that's what that'll do for you. Oh, and before I forget, if you hit Control, Alt, and left arrow, you can actually, or right arrow, Control, Alt, right arrow, lets you move in the direction of the next workspace, either be it to the left or to the right, wherever you are currently. Okay, where you're currently is highlighted by an orange border. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to close this and go back over here. Okay, that's dynamic workspaces. So as you keep going to the right, it will dynamically or automatically create more workspaces as you keep going to the right. Well, pretty self-explanatory, I think. Fixed number of workspaces does exactly that. Here, you statically set how many workspaces you want to set up for the system that you think you're going to use. And maybe this has something to do with you and focusing on very specific things that you want to get done rather than getting distracted across 6 or 10 different workspaces and different windows on each. That can be overwhelming and may get in the way of you getting shit done in the day. So let's see here. That is that. Primary display. So first, let's talk about that. Your primary display, let's pick on the laptop. Your laptop display would be the primary display unless you've set up something, customized something. If you attach an external monitor, that'll be this display right here, okay? So when it says workspaces on primary display, your laptop then, which is primary, will have the virtual workspaces that we just talked about. Whereas when you move your attention to your external monitor, there will only be one workspace for you to work with. So that would be akin to maybe you're previewing video content that you're editing on the big screen versus the little screen is your DaVinci editor window or maybe your OBS screen where you're doing your administrative work, where you're doing your creative work on the large screen. Just an example. If you want workspaces on all displays, now the confusion can get even better. Now your primary display can have virtual dynamic workspaces, but your external display can also. So if you got confused in the top screen, leave it here. Play with this, as you go along. You may find this to be useful. However, if you are productivity focused, you may not have a lot of workspaces and apps open. Just a thought. App switching. I forget what keyboard combination it is. Don't quote me on it. Maybe it's Control Tab. Let's see. I go over and open this and open this. And then if I do Control Tab, it's not Control Tab. How about Alt Tab? Okay. Alt Tab lets you switch between windows. Okay. And if you have windows open on various different desktops, oops, switch over here, go over here, open up something else. If you're getting lost and confused, I would say just simply play with it. I just want to illustrate this one point here. Include apps from all workspaces. So if you're switching between apps using Alt-Tab, it will see all apps across all workspaces, okay? Whereas, if you switch this to include apps from the current workspace only, now if I hit Control-Tab, it will only see the settings application or utility, okay? Because it's on the current workspace, because that's what we set up. Include apps only from the current workspace. That's how that works. So since I don't have that many apps open and I don't use that many workspaces, to me, this setting makes the most sense. But you set it up in whatever way works best for you. Appearance, probably one of the least important things. Of course, that's arguable. Some people want a nice aesthetic workspace to feel inspired to be productive. But very simply, this will change your background, as you'll notice the background changing. Okay. And eventually, you can even add pictures from your own folders that you've created. This was something I just created the other day. So you would go in here because you want to keep your wallpapers and personal pictures, maybe travel pictures, maybe professional work-related pictures in different folders. So this happens to be wallpaper. So you can browse to that folder, pick images from here in order to display them in the background. Okay, pretty simple. If you wanted the, let's see here, the selection, I think this was, you wanted to turn this green. See how this changes color? Okay. I like orange. Orange is cool. And the default, so this usually is light, and yet light to me is so bright that it would get to be really annoying really quickly. So I go back to dark, but you've got those options. And then these background images show you somewhat of almost what looks like a split screen. This would mean that when you switch between light and dark mode, this is what it would look like in light mode versus dark mode. That's all there is. Other than that, I will let you play with that a bit more on your time. Pretty straightforward. Here, the apps list shows you, I think it would show you all the apps that you have installed. And then if you click on it, it shows you what permissions it has on your system, and that the app notifications are turned on. Notifications would be, for example, if in Firefox you get a message, maybe from Facebook or something, it'll put a message on your screen. Or, for example, if with Balena Etcher, when you're done writing an ISO file to a USB drive, it'll actually pop up a little notification window, probably on the top right of your screen, unless you've changed that. Okay. And so you can even open the app from right here if you wanted, or you can get app details. Let's see if there are any. So this is a utility that's built in that is supposed to show you more info, but it doesn't have info on that app because I probably manually installed it. Let's go back to Firefox and see what it does. App details. And here now it shows you details about that particular application. And, reviews, where it came from, how much, how privileged the app is across your system, and some other things. You can play with this a little bit later. We're going to get to this updates a little bit later. So now let's go to default apps. So, for example, certain apps can be set to default. For example, if you clicked on a web link, a hyperlink, it would then automatically open up Firefox. That's all this does. And I don't remember where you actually set the default apps, but that's not so important right now. Here's your calendar app. Here's the music app, or the app that opens by default when you click on, let's say, an MP3 file. Same thing goes for videos. Same thing goes for image viewer. But more importantly, this kind of takes care of itself. And if you want to change the default app, I can probably address that sometime in the future. Media auto start. Now, this is important because it has something to do with the security of your system. When you plug media into your system, I'm going to turn this on so this becomes available. People probably don't use CDs and DVDs too much anymore. But if you plug in a USB thumb drive, if there's music on there, that would be one thing. But if there's software on there, from my recommendation, from a security standpoint, you don't ever want anything nowadays to just randomly run from an externally plugged in device. Because anybody can come up to your desktop or laptop computer, depends on circumstance, but they can plug something into your computer when you're not looking and potentially hack your system and get into your private data if your system is not mindfully set up to keep your system to yourself, right? Unless it's a public system that you want to share with other people. Generally, you want to be mindful as to what runs on your computer so that you know what's going on and that there are no surprises. Therefore, I've set all of these up to do nothing. So this means that when an external device is plugged in, be it a CD or be it a USB thumb drive, it's not going to do anything. Instead, what you would do is go to the file manager, and then a thumb drive would show up here, or if you have an externally connected USB-based CD or DVD drive, Blu-ray drive, then it will show here, and then you can manipulate it manually, knowing full well what you're doing, and so no surprises at least. I still have that open. And let's go to our back where we are. So I usually have this turned off because I don't want anything automatically running. That's just me. If you're more convenience oriented, there's your balance, right? Security or convenience. Convenience usually is at the expense of security. Enough said. Notifications, like I talked about earlier, for example, if you're running a utility like Etcher, it will burn an ISO to a thumb drive, and when it's done, it can put a notification up on your screen saying that it's done. You can close the app, pull out your USB stick, and go on with your life. Now, if you're in the middle of something, such as me, for example, being in the middle of a recording right now, if I had notifications turned on my desktop, I probably would find that to be a nuisance. So you can then have those notifications disabled, as in, don't bother me right now. Lock screen notifications means that once your screen is locked, if you have this turned on, notifications can still show up on your screen. Now, you may or may not want that. You decide. Search is something I don't particularly use, but you can, when you have this turned on, you can search for contact names, you can search for file names, you can look through your calendar, you can maybe even look up URLs or shortcuts. App search, I would actually tend to want to not have this even enabled because I don't need all this on. I have a pretty good idea where things are, so I would just simply browse to it and be done with it. Online accounts, once again, it comes back to convenience. To be upfront with you, I have not used this here. I think the way this works, if it's important to you, I can make another video about this. I don't use it. When I, for example, want to interact with Google, I use either the Chrome browser or let's see, what's my other browser that I use? Vivaldi browser that is based on the same technology. And I will use that browser to authenticate to the Google services and then look at my email or Google Drive or YouTube or whatnot. I don't need my credentials typed in here because then every time my system comes up, I think I'm going to be making a connection with Google when I may not even need it. So to me, there isn't much convenience to this because you can just set up your credentials in your web browser when you want to interact with Google, otherwise shut it off. That's how I handle things. The same thing here for Microsoft email or Microsoft 365, Exchange. I don't use any of this stuff. Enterprise authentication, we're not going to get into right now. That's for an enterprise environment when you work, interact with an enterprise corporate environment. Email server, again, this, I haven't played with this, like I said, but I use Thunderbird, for example, as my email program. And Thunderbird, you can either go through its configuration wizard, where you tell it where your email is located, what the server name is, and you type in a few tidbits and you're done. You can also type it in here, and yet I don't know if Thunderbird interacts with the OS, with the operating system, Fedora, if you have the credentials typed in here. So to me, I don't know how this saves me time. I don't know which email program this works in conjunction with. So if you're interested in this, I can do a video on it and walk you through it. It's no problem. But for right now, to me, this seems convenience oriented and may actually ping back to some outside service when you may not always want that. So you decide if this is something that you're going to want to use. Sharing, just like it says, I mean, we're in the age of having transcended sneakernet, right? Where you put on your sneakers and you walk on over to a computer near you. So now you've got networking, which in the older days, progression would have been having a wired network. So now we're even at the phase of having a wireless network. Heck, you can even share files with people across the other side of the planet. What do you know? So if you wanted to share files, you can then set this up. You can change the device name right here. Click on the pencil and change this to whatever you want. You can then turn on file sharing and set up passwords. You use DAV to communicate. I'm not going to get into all of this for the time being. You don't need this just to get going. I figure that if you're getting the system started, to just use it for, let's say, web browsing or email, or even if you were migrating from maybe Windows or Mac to Linux, you don't need this right away. So I will do another video on this, provided that you are interested, and I can tell you how to set up file sharing. I share on my network, but I don't use it in this method. I use I use NFS, or I use SSH or SFTP across the local network. It's more secure, and again, it suits my standards rather than using arguably less secure protocols. Okay. Well-being, don't use it, but as the name might indicate, its purpose is most likely to get you off your computer, go eat, go walk, go take a shower, just get away from the computer for a moment, give your noodle a little break, give your eyes a little break, go socialize, go do something else, um, and not sit too much, which may not be so healthy. Next victim, the mouse. Okay, so you're probably very familiar with the mouse already. The primary button, obviously the primary button will be left if you're right-handed, or the primary button will be right if you're left-handed. You can play with these settings a bit. If your pointer, the pointer that you're seeing moving here on the screen, if it's too slow for you or too fast, you can slide this to slow it down or slide it to speed it up. Okay? Mouse acceleration will actually have an effect on accelerating, maybe in how responsive the pointer is. Honestly, I did not look at the documentation on this, if there is any. Sometimes I just use the force loop. In other words, use an intuitive intelligence by just play with it, see what happens, see if the new setting is to my liking, and then just move on. Sometimes reading excessive documentation just takes even more time, gets to be even more arduous, and it's not always necessary. So traditional versus natural scrolling. From what I've seen, this is actually backwards the way it works. But without confusing you, but trying to explain it, I would say play with it. Suffice it to say, usually, you move the pointer here and illustrate the point. You see how there's a scroll bar right here, right? So traditionally, normally when it's set to traditional, when I scroll down with the mouse wheel, the scroll bar is supposed to move. It didn't. When it's set to natural and you move the scroll wheel, this is supposed to move the screen. Where it's set, when it's set to traditional, it's supposed to move the scroll bar, right? So you play with this and you find the setting that works best for you. Okay, that's probably the easiest way so that you don't get confused. The keyboard usually is set up on its own. If if you're writing in Arabic or Chinese or Georgian or something other exotic, Cherokee or something, I have no experience with other keyboard layouts, so I would not be the best person to ask. Suffice it to say, usually after you install the computer, the installation process will ask you what keyboard layout you have in the very beginning. So this should be a no-brainer. You would already have this set up. You would only change this if the keyboard layout you chose, it's not working for some reason. I'm not going to get into these alternate keys right now. We can leave that for later. The color management. So color management has to do with what colors your display is capable of representing to you. There are different color spaces out there like Rec 709 or Rec 2020 that just give you varying levels of color gamut. Let me see if I can find really quick what I'm talking about. Color gamut. You see this display right here? And you look at, hopefully, I was hoping it was going to give you a display of where or what the difference is. Here we go. This is a better one. See, RGB is right here. This is where most monitors display color. Then this green triangle is P3. Adobe RGB is kind of hard to see. It's this blue triangle. So the difference is basically in the hues of different colors that your monitor is capable of displaying. I'm not going to go any deeper than that, but that's what this is all about. So if you wanted to fine-tune the display, you might have a custom color profile file for your specific monitor that then you can add so that the desktop will know that you have more or less colors available. And then you can get into measuring the colors on your screen and fine-tuning it. That actually goes beyond my experience, but that's what this is for. The only other thing I can say here is if you have a printer attached, this will also show a color profile for the printer, once again, indicative of the color gamut that your printer is capable of representing with its output or when it creates a hard copy of something, okay? All right, so now I just turned on my my wireless printer, provided that my virtual machine will actually allow me to see the printer. If not, I'll shoot another video. It's not the end of the world. Okay, so let's see if, let me see my virtual machine here. BD. Let's see if I can see the device. There was a place here someplace. Let's see. Searching for printers. So this is what it would look like, right? If you wanted to add a printer, you need to make sure that it's connected to your computer or that it's on the network. And your system has to be able to see it. So you would have to have this icon here, which means that you're connected to the network via a cable, Ethernet cable. Or it would have a different icon indicating wireless connectivity, in which case there would be at least one printer, unless you have more, showing up in this list right here. You would select it and then you would hit add, and then it will show itself on your list here. I don't have it showing right now. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure exactly where to configure that you should be able to see it. So let's leave this for another time. I can make another video. It's no big deal. Who prints nowadays anyway, right? Who wants more paper? That's a good cop-out, and I'll stick to that for now. So accessibility, that is exactly also what it sounds like. This is for people with disabilities, visual and otherwise. Again, this is something I know little to nothing about. A good friend of mine in Taiwan is legally blind, 95% blind, let's say. Um, and even though I could recommend using Linux to him, I would not know how to configure the system so that he can actually use it, let alone in Chinese. So there are a few functions here, though, that are useful that you and I can use even if we don't have disabilities. So let's see here. Screen reader. This sounds actually rather robotic, but this will read back text that's on your screen. Let's see here. On off shapes. Animation effects. It looks like this is going to make certain graphical representations on the screen, maybe when you open Windows or some such thing, it'll actually slow it down to make it look nicer. Where if you have the animation effect turned off, it sounds like the interaction with the desktop will be more abrupt. It just seems like a really small thing, not very important. Large text, well, we can turn that on. You can see, it just turns the text a bit larger. If you need that, you can leave that on. The cursor size, that's my pointer actually. That's not a cursor. I don't know why they call it cursor. This is where the pointer can be increased in size. So if you do have a hard time seeing things, it can be made quite big. A little bit too big for my liking. So hopefully this is good for you as well as it is for me. And then always show scroll bars. This is actually nice because when you have this turned off, you kind of have to know where scroll bars are. If you didn't know, there's actually one here, but you wouldn't see it unless you hover over it. So if you're not very familiar with the interface with this particular desktop, with Gnome Desktop and whatnot, you can leave this on so that way you will always see scroll bars when they're available, so that way you have an easier time interacting with your windows. Let's go back here. Hearing, over amplification. So the audio will go to 100%. This will allow it to go beyond 100%, which means it would use an amplifier. But if you do that, if you turn this on, it says that the sound quality may be reduced. Cursor blinking. So a cursor, actually, this is a cursor, the block that's blinking right there. There we go. Okay. So when you have this on blinking, so now it would turn the blinking off, I think. Yep, sure did. Usually you can turn the blinking on and off here in the preferences. So I'm kind of surprised that you would turn it on and off here. So that's all that is. So that's a cursor. What I'm moving on the screen right now is a pointer. I don't know how people got that definition backwards, but you know, that's evolution of language for you. The blink speed, it does exactly what it indicates. You can slow the blinking down to make it really slow, or you can go much faster. Okay, actually, I like that. Repeat keys. This basically has to do with how quickly keys are, well, first of all, repeat keys is turned on. So when you hold a key down, it actually does repeat. And then here you can set up at what rate, at what speed that key will repeat while you're holding it down. Okay, so you can slow that down or speed it up. Again, not something that we need to spend a whole lot of time with when you're just wanting to get going. But this is accessibility and some of the features that might mean something to you, that might be useful for you on an everyday basis. That's why I took a curveball into this region. Zoom, magnification factor. So you could actually zoom your screen display, although this probably, oh, okay, so you have to, oh shit, okay. Yeah, this goes too big. So if you want your screen to be zoomed, especially for my recording, I guess I could use this setting. That would be where you set this up. Again, this is for, if you have difficulty seeing things on the screen, you need glasses. But before you start doing magnification, I would recommend that you go to a native resolution that uses smaller numbers. And your screen display will be larger natively rather than you having to muck with it here and magnify something. Does that make sense? If not, let me know. I can show this to you another time. So let's move on. Privacy and security, arguably one of the most important aspects of the configuration if you care about your personal data and want to keep it to yourself, as opposed to sharing it with the world, right? So screen lock. I think we just had that on one of the other screens here. So blank display delay. So this is set to 5 minutes by default, and it can automatically lock your screen. This is where it's set up. And then if you want to fine tune this further, you can actually delay the lock by another 3 minutes. So after 5 minutes of you not interacting with the screen, this will blank to conserve some power on your monitor. And 3 minutes after that will actually lock. Now, if you have kids around the house or somebody else that you don't want to have access to your computer, if you happen to walk away, take a shower, and then they can sit and go through your stuff, God forbid, you would probably want to lock the screen manually rather than relying on this. But before I go there, lock screen notifications. So at the moment, notifications are turned off so that after the screen locks, you should not be getting any notifications, right? Because those are private. If you don't care about private, then you can turn this on. Okay. So again, I'm on a VM, a virtual machine. So all of this stuff none of this is useful to me. So I'm going to turn all this off. But to show you really quickly, if you wanted to lock the screen, you would just simply click on this lock icon right here. Okay. In order to get here, I just went to this icon group at the top right. You click here, click on any one of these. It just opens up as a group anyway. And then click on the lock icon. I think there's a keyboard sequence that might be Control H or Control L or something. We can go and look at your keyboard. Let me see here. That's how you can get sidetracked. Oh, okay. Super L right here. So if you wanted to lock the screen before you walk away from it, you can either click on the lock icon or you can hit the Super and L button. So rather than hitting Control and key, you would hit, on some keyboards, it is the Windows key. On some other systems, it could be actually labeled Super or could have a penguin on it. Anyway, that's what Super is. So you'd hold Super, hit the L button, and it'll lock the screen. Okay, boom, done. So now let's go back to privacy, location. Okay, so if privacy is an issue for you, then you probably don't want automatic device location turned on. If this is not important to you, you can turn this on. And then at some point, it will actually show here a list of applications that use your automatic device location. So let's go back. Let's see here, location. Let's go to... I guess we're going to switch to the file history. So the system, Fedora, will keep a list of files that you frequently access. A case in point might be a word processor where I think it actually keeps its own database, but I want to just use it as an example. Well, let me actually show you rather than just talking. Let's see if we have the app even installed. Okay, LibreOffice, right? If you had opened up a bunch of documents recently, either to read them or to write them, they would show up under recent documents right here. Okay, that's an example of a document history. So if you don't want the system to keep a document history, you can turn this off. In my case, I have it automatically delete the history after a day. As you can see, you have various options here, even forever, to always keep the history. Now, if you keep a history indefinitely, you may start seeing eventually that your hard disk is getting filled up. If you're starting to run out of space, you can always manually clear the history here, okay? Temporary files, these are files that the system uses. I'm not going to go into the nuts and bolts of that, but temporary files are something that the operating system uses, and those are frequently used, and it should help the system actually function a little bit more quickly. Those can be deleted. In my case, I just delete them after a day. Temporary files don't need to be there any longer than that. Trash, again, when you put something in the trash can, you may want to recover it. And so here, you may want to set how much of a grace period you want before something that you put in the trash gets deleted permanently. That's all that does, okay? So here again, you have kind of a issue of convenience versus security. And as you can see with the red links, you can manually delete each one of those, okay? That's it. So lock screen location, I could have sworn there was something else here that I wanted to show you. Diagnostics, this is where the operating system or Fedora would send non-personal diagnostic data back to Fedora, especially crash reports or bug reports that will help them, in essence, fix bugs and provide a better product to you, okay? I don't have a way, I mean, short of running something called Wireshark and monitoring my network and making sure that after analyzing packet data structures, whether or not these problem reports are actually, leaking personal information or not, you can have this turned on or off. It's really up to you. And it depends on your level of comfort and your level of trust with any organization. For me, I think I would trust Linux a lot more than any other alternative. But if you are on a low power computer and maybe you have smaller disk space, maybe you're working on critical things and CPU cycles are important to you, then maybe you want to turn a bunch of these excessive bells and whistles off just so that you have a more cleanly functioning system. It'll be more fluid for you. There was actually something here that maybe it's under system. Okay. So region and language. This one is straightforward. Obviously, you will have set this up during the install, but you can change it here if you wanted to. Maybe you wanted you hit the return button a little bit too quickly and you meant this to be English Great Britain instead, or English Australia, or some such thing, or Singapore. Then you can change this here. And then formats, even though you're using English, you could use the German format, or you can use Russian format, although I don't want to click on here because I won't be able to read anything anymore. Or maybe I can. Let's see. Yeah, see? I can still read the date anyway. So let's go back to English. Okay. So this is basically has to do with different countries will format dates differently. The American system has never made any sense to me because it's not logical, it's not sequential. You've got the month and then the day and then the year. Makes no sense to me. So to me, what does make sense is the day, the month, the year, or the year, month, and the day. Mixing, jumbling things up um, is nonsense to me, but that's what's considered normal here. So we'll leave that alone. Date and time. So automatic date and time. When you have this turned on, your system's time and date, just like it says, would make use of a service called NTP or Network Time Protocol, which will make contact with an external time server and synchronize your time on your laptop so that way you always have accurate time. And if you have, where were we here? We were under, was it under privacy and location? So if you have location turned on here, and when you go into date and time, it can actually automatically set your time zone. So now if you fly to Auckland, or you fly to Singapore, or you fly to Berlin, it's once you make a network connection there, it will automatically set the time and the time zone for you. So that's pretty convenient if you don't want to have to muck with it, especially if time is sensitive in terms of you having the right timestamp on maybe communications that you interact with, like email, or if you want to do video conferencing and you need to have accurate time, this can all be set automatically for you. And here, you can set whether you like the 24-hour clock or you want to have AM, PM showing like it shows here now, right? In the weekday, you can remove that. Now it just shows the time, okay? Put the week back, or put the day back in, put the full date back in here. And then if you click on this, it'll show you a drop-down calendar. And here are all the dates and, some notifications, for example. And here is another place where you can set don't disturb. You can clear notifications once you've read what they are, okay? And if you want week numbers, again, not something that I'm accustomed to using, but then week numbers will show up right here. Pretty straightforward. I don't like the automatic time zone because I don't like the daylight savings time. And apparently the Jamaicans are the only ones who are not impressed with daylight savings. So I'm going by their time standards. Enough said there. Users, again, just like it says, well, obvious to me, maybe not to you. So Linux, like many other operating systems nowadays, are set up to allow multiple users to have their own profiles. So I have a profile, and if I want my wife or a friend or my mother or somebody else to have access to my computer, I can go up here and unlock this section. And then I can go in here and add another user, right? And if I trust the person enough, I can let them also administrate this system. And basically what this does, this will allow you to run the system as root, which is kind of God mode. You can do anything on the computer, just to put it simply. And it will also allow you to install software. If this is disabled, that user will not be able to install software, okay? So this is how you control access rights on the computer. And generally, from a systems administration perspective, you only give access rights on an as-needed basis. So if somebody's going to get on your computer just to browse the internet, they don't need administrator access. kids get on the computer with their own accounts playing video games or something, or doing their own browsing because it's a family computer, they also don't need administrator access. But going on down here, you can type in a name, and then the name that you log in with is the username. So St. John Smythe, pleasure to make your acquaintance. Okay, so that's what that would look like. You would put the full name here and the username. Now, mind you, you can type anything in here, but you just have to remember what that is. Okay, you can make this difficult, you can make it long, but remember, you're going to have to type it. So if you want this to be usable, it has to be something that is going to be usable and understandable, memorable for this user. So here, I have actually never looked this up. So I'm going to give you my best guess is that the user sets the password at first login. So this would mean the account is going to be open and completely not secured by any password. So that if somebody knows this username, they could actually hijack that account and make up their own password and now have access. So in that case, if that is a concern, you would go down here and just write the password for the person, or let the person type it in manually, and you turn away for a moment. That would be probably the more recommended route. I'm going to cancel that because I don't need that. And then here under language, each user can have their own language. You know, my wife could have Portuguese, I can have German, somebody else can have Swahili, whatever, Cherokee. But then you would also have to have under keyboard, you would have to have input method probably set appropriately. So just make sure that what you set up here matches. Enterprise login, this is for corporate users. This is going to be for Active Directory, LDAP related configurations. I don't have anything like that set up here, and this goes a bit beyond the scope of just getting you going. So that's going to be another screen for another day, maybe. Remote Desktop is, what was it called? I think it was actually called Remote Desktop on Windows. I know on Linux they have different apps that do this, but it lets you graphically log in to the desktop of another person's computer so that the remote user can see your local desktop. The purpose for that is that if the remote user needs technical support, the person helping can actually see the screen. Now, whether the remote helper is going to have actual pointer and keyboard access, I honestly don't know. It may depend upon the remote desktop service that is running on the remote system. Two systems. One is the helper, one is the person who needs help. So the person who needs help would have to have a service running that probably provides access rights or limits access rights. That's what I was trying to say. I'm trying to be clear. I can visualize this because I've worked with this, but it may not make sense to you, but then you may not have use for this either. If you do need help from a remote person, here's where you would set that up. Just make absolutely certain that the other person is trustworthy. Okay, because once they get access to your computer and can, even worse, if they can move the mouse and they can start typing things, they may go faster than you understand. And before you know it, you're locked out of your own computer and maybe losing data. I mean, worst case scenario. You always have to think about your security nowadays. So just be careful, okay? Secure shell. So this is something that as an administrator you would use to log into a remote server using an encrypted secure shell. It uses an encrypted tunnel over the over the network, be it over the wire, could be wireless, could be in the same office, could be across the globe. Okay? It is meant to log into a remote server that could be running Unix, could be running Windows, could be a virtual machine in a cloud someplace like Google Cloud or Amazon Cloud or Azure Cloud or whatnot. Could be a hypervisor, could be a NAS, could be many different things. Okay, could also be for remote support as well, although this would not be graphical unless you know how to set that up. Okay, you probably, if you're watching this video, this is probably beyond your scope, but I wanted to go over it anyway. About gives you some basic information about your computer. So if you ever do need to talk to a support person, you can at least tell them what you're running. I know from experience that support people usually don't like to have damsels in distress calling on the phone saying my computer is broken, but then have no other detail to give. Okay, so if you need technical support, you want to give a little bit of a framework of what the problem is, what you're running, what did you experience? Was there an error on the screen? What were you doing? Those kinds of things. Give the other person a clue because they were not standing behind you when you were doing it. So you have to paint the picture for them. Okay? Very basic. So, I mean, you can read here that it shows the operating system. It will show the actual hardware that you're running. This is virtualized hardware, so this is going to look a little different on my screen. What processor you're running, how much memory you have, how much disk storage you have, and then here a little bit more detail in terms of the OS and what windowing system. This may be more information than you know what to do with, but if somebody asks, you know where to find at least this, okay? So let's put away those toys. That was about, oh, okay. So the maybe third most important thing, because from time to time you will want to update your system, is the software updates. You're probably wondering, how do you keep your system up to date, right? Well, that's what this is. So click on here. And here, it will have brought up, here, let me show you. It will have brought up this application right here, software, okay? It just, with this link, software update, it brings you directly to the updates tab, okay? So now it says there are system updates and there's a Firefox update. So all you need to do is just simply click on download and it will go and fetch it for you, update itself. And it's rare that on a Linux system you need to reboot. Shoot me. Restart and update. Okay, let's see. We'll click here and let's see what happens. Restart and install. So in this case, it does need to restart. Probably from the system update, if it updated the kernel or something very low level and internal to the system, then in those rare cases, it actually does need to restart the system. So here it's installing it. And it doesn't take too long. I mean, if you have a 100 megabit connection to the internet or faster, it will be pretty quick to update your system. And then the only other speed bump might be the speed of your computer itself and how much memory you have. And hopefully you don't run out of storage space. So, but those are all, you know, those are small things that we can deal with on a case-by-case basis. So let's see if the system boots back up. Here it is. Click. Okay. And provided I type my password correctly, we're back in business. And that is really all it is. And now it shows you that there was a software update and you can review it. System updates, let's see what it updated. Maybe that'll make it bigger. No, it doesn't. Nope, can't make this any bigger. So Blue Z, This BlueZ has to do with, this is a driver for Bluetooth. We don't even use it. And Bluetooth Cups has to do with a built-in print server. It basically is a service that allows you to print to a printer that's attached to your computer or that's out there wirelessly. But you're not going to be using BlueZ unless you've got Bluetooth enabled. Firefox, yeah, there was a kernel update, just like I said. So in that case, sometimes kernel modules, sometimes the system will want to restart because it wants to flush out the old and load the new. Very simple, okay? Then you can look here at all the stuff that was updated. If you are curious, here it will show you that you're now running the latest version of Firefox. And then you can just close this by clicking on the X. There are no more updates. And if you click on Explore, here then you can find other applications that you may want to work with. And that, my friend, will take us to a new video. All right? You have a wonderful day out there. Blessed be. And I will see you in the next iteration.